Hey, today we're going to do a deep dive in my memory keeper, the A6 Hobonichi Techo Avec. I have been dipping in and out of this system since May of 2023. I opted to go with the Avec version, and if you've not seen these notebooks before, it is an A6 size daily planner from Hobonichi. You get monthly calendars and daily spreads with the full page per day, and the colors change month over month. What makes this the Avec is the years split into two books. You get January through June in one book and July through December in the second, and that is the one that I am currently in. I've been using this as my memory keeper off and on this year, but I'm kind of back into it after deciding I wanted to take a break from my traveler's notebooks, and I'm still trying to figure out what I want to memory keep in for next year. And the A6 Hobonichi Techo is a big contender. I'm not sure I would go with an Avec for next year again, but we'll kind of get into that as we go. So in this planner, there is a future log portion, and I typically use this as an index. So I'll do a brief synopsis of the things that I wrote about on that day, just as a way of logging that I filled it out. And also these make great reference pages at the end of the year. And in this top section, I'm trying to write down some monthly favorites. So the things I did for August were a favorite skincare product, a favorite memory with my husband, and then my favorite thing I read. And those are kind of the three things that I'm tracking, and I'll add them to the top. I want to add little icons so I can tell what they are, but I want to draw them up and make stickers out of them. So that'll be coming later on, I guess. In the monthly spreads, I have been memory keeping, and these are very a la Megan Rhiannon. If you've seen some of her old videos when she was in A6, I kind of tried to deco in a similar way to hers. I took inspiration from that, but in here, this is a pure record memory keeping space. I don't do any pre-planning in these spreads. I just kind of come back at the end of the week, pull out some stickers that I think apply to some of the things that I did, or fill out the free space and journal about my day. Just little things. I try to record events, travel, memories, some of the highlights, and they're just fun to kind of look through at the end of the month. And this is a great opportunity for me to work through some of my stickers. I've got quite the stash, and I'm trying to make a dent in them. And then in the column at the end of the month, I do a little bit of journaling, reflecting on the month as a whole. I don't fill these out day by day. Like, we're currently in the weekend here and I haven't touched this. I typically come in at the end of the week and do it as a bit of a recap. I like this, but I don't necessarily, like, I'm just filling them up to fill them up, if that makes sense. There's not really a good purpose to this. It is a bit of duplication of effort, but I hate leaving the spreads blank. I think I'd rather have like a weekly page to do like a weekly reflection on versus the month as a whole, but I do think they look cute, and I'm trash for aesthetics, as we have established. All right, so let me just move to kind of August. So I did try to kind of use this in the beginning of July as well. And if you've been following along my planner crazy journey this year, I was using this exact same combo in the month of June, and I think the latter half of May. And July, I moved into my traveler's notebooks and a little bit into August for about 6 weeks. So I did kind of pick this up off and on in the month of July, just whenever I thought, hey, I was having a bad day with my traveler's notebook. So some of these spreads are full, but I didn't really officially move back into this until the 13th of August. So we're just going to kind of pick up from there. So let me show you a blank daily page first. If you have not seen the Techo original, so not the Techo planner, but the Techo original, they have some nice features that I really like. There's the invisible line down the middle, which kind of gives you two separate columns if you want to break up your text. They are timed for 24 hours down the left-hand side. There are 5 check boxes at the top and then a quote along the bottom. One thing I actually really like about this is the moon phase and the day of the year it is. It's a nice touch and something I'm always looking for. The kanji for the day of the week is in Japanese, but I've been using these planners for so long that I've pattern matched. I know which days are which for the most part, so that's not a big deal for me. I'm very interested in the English edition that they're coming out with for 2024. So if I go with this for next year, I'll probably go with the English edition just to see the differences and try it out. the main way I use these pages is for memory keeping. So I come in typically before bed and I will draw something, put down any ephemera that I've collected. I'll print out pictures if I think they're relevant or try and find a sticker that kind of fits the vibe, and I will put those down and then I will write about my day. It is different from how I journal in other notebooks. I do have a separate notebook that kind of supports my Dear Diary thoughts, vision journaling, morning pages, creative writing. I do a lot of journaling. I go through a lot of pages. This would not be enough for me to journal everything that I want to journal. In fact, an A5 page per day in the Hobonichi Cousin wasn't enough room, which is why I always kind of end up supplementing with a lot of other notebooks. But the journaling in here is very date specific. I'm writing about what we did, what my thoughts were about that, funny stories from the day. And if it was a very boring day, I'm journaling about something that I was thinking about that day. And what I really like about journaling on a dated page is I feel like the contents become very meaningful for me. I love how they're tied back to a specific date, and there's just so much fun to flip through, and I actually enjoy going back and rereading through these. So there is a huge pull for me next year for memory keeping to go with a daily version. One thing I like about this A6 size in particular is there is a quote at the bottom, and with the check boxes at the top, when you're actually looking at the space that you write in, it's pretty equivalent to a passport size. So I find it to be very sustainable. Now, if I have like a really busy day and a lot to write about, this probably isn't enough room, but I can always add in flaps and things like that. But for the most part, this is a pretty sustainable amount of space for me to keep up with. If I print out a picture, it takes less than 5 minutes for me to journal. But if I'm doing something like this where I was drawing and watercoloring and journaling, this is about 20 to 25 minutes depending on how intricate I want to get with my sketch. I have been using exclusively black ink in my journaling in this notebook, mostly just because I like how it looks for that consistency. It's something that I used to do in my Hobonichi Cousins over the years, as I would use just one colored ink throughout the entire thing. And as much as I love using like fun fountain pen colors, it looks really nice, I think. So in this journal, because I have other supplemental journals where I can use my more colorful inks, I've just stuck with black in this, and I think I'd probably do similar again for next year as well. I just like that consistency. It feels like one log. I don't know. It's silly. These are some of my top picks for the 2024 Hobonichi launch. I haven't purchased anything yet as of filming this, but that's what I'm thinking about. I like this paper because I can watercolor in it. The darker font is done with a brush pen, my Tombow Fudenosuke hardtip brush pen. And when I fill these out, I typically will start with like what's the big thing or the intricate drawing, let that dry, and then I come and journal around it. So like this day I kind of set it up and never went back and journaled, and that's totally fine. I think there's going to be plenty of blank pages anytime I take on a daily. It's just part of the deal and it doesn't really bother me anymore. But I think what I'm gaining from this versus journaling in a weekly spread is I get into the details a lot more, and I just feel like how I approach journaling in here is a lot more, I don't know, useful. I think it's going to be so much cooler to reflect on at the end of the year versus a weekly spread. The weekly spreads I enjoy to go back and like see the week as a whole and figure out when did we do things, yada yada yada, but my weekly spreads end up really being a direct duplication or just a translation of the information that I have in my bullet journal in my daily logs. It's like almost verbatim in the columns, these types of things. So I think I was just kind of getting a little bit it is a duplicate. I do a lot of duplicating, but at some point I kind of have to draw a line in the sand. And this feels like a different type of journaling compared to what I do in my bullet journal, and I think that's why I like it a lot. At the beginning of each month, there is sort of a blank page. And what I've been doing is I've been printing out my Patreon perks just to record the drawings that I did. So these were the perks for September. They're kind of like fantasy planner deals, like Isabel's planner from Animal Crossing, and this was Howl's planner from Howl's Moving Castle, and Sebastian from Stardew Valley, and then some of these are just doodles that I did. But underneath here, I've been splitting this into 4 quadrants, and this is how I do my monthly reflection before I set up my bullet journal for the next month. So I'll write down things that I'm grateful for, reflect on the previous month, what went well, what didn't, what's upcoming for the month. So things like birthdays, holidays, events, things that I'm going to need to prepare for, and then any changes that I want to do for my monthly setup. Like, do I want to stick with the layout? Do I want to start a different tracker? Do I need to abandon something? Or how do I want to adjust the actual spreads in my bullet journal? So I've been doing that in here just because I feel like they're interesting to look back on, and I didn't know how else to use that particular page. I think maybe next year, if I go with this, I would go with like a monthly reflection, like collage, maybe print out stickers or something like that. But for now, that's how I'm currently using the space. There are some predated pages in the back of the Hobonichi Techo, and I've kind of blocked these off. I need to go in and actually fill them up. So there's a space for favorites, and you can kind of indicate your favorite type of thing with the little icons there, but I want to use these for favorite albums. I'm big into music, so I want to go through and just record my favorite albums from the last 6 months of the year that hopefully I've kind of released or that I'm spending a lot of time listening to. And then there's the My 100 list. And I got really inspired one day, and I sat down and I looked all over Pinterest, and I just gathered a bunch of journaling prompts and creative writing prompts. So if I didn't know what to journal about on a particular day, I could flip here. In retrospect, I've only done one of these, and I've not run out of things to say, I guess, when it comes to journaling. So for the most part, I haven't touched this. I don't think I would reuse the My 100 to do this next year, maybe just print it out and tuck it into the pocket of my journal. So if I did feel like I had a block, I could reference it. But on the remaining 50, I did a list of like Patreon video ideas and YouTube ideas, and as like patrons request ideas and things over my Discord server, I'll kind of add it to this list. So I think this was useful when I looked at the My 100, because I've got the Avec. There is a My 100 for the first half of the year and the second half of the year, and I'm like, I don't do 200 of anything in a year that I know of, so it felt like kind of a daunting spread. So next year, if there's only 100 things to do in a year, maybe this kind of makes sense. I typically do one YouTube video a week and one Patreon something a week, so collectively that's about 52 times 2, I don't know, but I might bring this over. I think that's a good use for that, but I never know what to collect on the My 100. I would love to collect reading and media, but I don't watch TV all that often, and I read so much slower than I used to. As I've gotten older, I used to be able to mow through books. Now it takes me like a month to read a book because I just don't want to read it, I guess. So let me know what you use your My 100 for, because if I'm in Hobonichi next year, I'm determined to have a cool My 100 page for the first time. But yeah, those are kind of the only pages I'm using in the back as of now. I've got my pencil board back here and some dots, but that is how I'm using this. I do really like the thinness of the Avec when it's in the cover. This is the My Manga and I cover, I think from, I want to say 2021, but I don't remember at this point. I like how thin it is when you've got the Avec in there only, but I think next year, if I go with the Hobonichi Techo, I want to go for a full year English edition, just to have it all in one thing at the end of the year, because it is kind of, I mean, it's not a big deal, but I like to go back and flip through my previous spreads just to kind of reminisce throughout the year. And then with it being in a separate notebook on the shelf, it's kind of like, oh, I can't just do that. I have to go pull it off the shelf. So I think I would like to keep the full year contained to one thing. It does get pretty fluffy because I've started keeping a lot of ephemera, which is something I never did in the past, but since discovering Traveler's Notebooks last year, that's more, I do that a lot more. So I think this is going to get super fluffy if I go with this next year, but I'm also kind of looking forward to that idea as well. But anyway, if you use a Hobonichi for journaling, which one do you use? Do you use them similarly or differently to me? I would love to hear down below, because this is the part of my system that I'm the most unsure of for 2024, and kind of where I'm doing all the thinking and journaling about planners and just trying to figure out how do I want to memory keep and journal for next year. But if you've made it this long, thank you so much for being here, and I will talk to you soon.